when I talk about my career, people tend to pick out like where I am or what I've achieved or the things that you can see easily, but you don't see. You see those points where you're really struggling. Yeah, you don't see them, but weirdly, those are the things that make you push yourself harder.
Okay, a boy from Bomet is now working at Google.
There are times you felt, oh, I wish I could be better, I could be cooler, I could be this, I could be that, but with time you just realize you are you. And jumping into something compared to someone else, you don't know the other person's story.
That's true.
Yeah, and then don't wait until you feel you're ready. But there's also the uncertainty of, I don't have a job. You have this conversation with someone and then it falls apart in a certain way. You start, if you're not careful, you can start doubting like your abilities.
Kirui,
Hey, Fian.
pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. It feels like we'd met before.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised we've actually never met in person.
Yeah, finally.
Yeah,
You were a boy from Tenwek.
yeah, I schooled in Tenwek,
Yeah.
but I'm a boy from Bomet.
Bomet.
Yeah, Bomet is actually Kenya's largest tea producing county, but Kericho has the PR. But it's Bomet that has the tea.
What a Bomet.
Yes, yes.
Okay, a boy from Bomet is now working at Google.
Yeah, it's not unbelievable. I mean, just because you come from Bomet doesn't mean you're not as bright or you. Opportunities, yeah, but
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be working at Google. I don't take that for granted, and it's an amazing opportunity. I didn't think personally that this would be part of what I did. Kind of not stumbled, just took different opportunities, tried different things, and found myself here. Yeah.
So, for me to understand you a bit better, I really want to understand the boy from Bomet, from Tenwek. What kind of kid were you?
Okay, so I grew up in a tea farm, in a tea growing side of Kenya. So a lot of my play was outside. So one interesting thing that when I talk to my friends, we really can't relate on is cartoons. I didn't watch cartoons. I grew up outside entirely. And then growing up, especially for the generation that I come from, my father took himself to school. My grandfather didn't see the point of selling his cows to take someone to school. But I feel my dad saw the value of education quite early on. So from the onset, he was very particular about making sure that we went to good schools. And in this particular case, my primary school education was at a boarding school called Tenwek Boarding, which was not normal or the normal thing within the space that we were in. A lot of parents felt it was a waste of money, you're making your child suffer. But it turned out to be like my biggest break, because from Tenwek Boarding, I joined Lenana School, and that sort of like now exposed me to a very different like set of opportunities, things to learn. Can you imagine moving from Shags, like deep in Shags with a very strong accent, and then coming to Lenana School where the cool kids are and you're nothing close to them? Yeah. So in a way, that contrast between where I was before and where I am now, I love it because it speaks a lot about the opportunities or the things that have happened in my life, but also like really love my background in a way. It gives me a very different perspective of the world. I'm a farm boy and at the same time a city boy.
A farm boy.
Yeah.
A farm boy. I want to know a bit about that. Were you, because right now you're very good with people. Were you a shy boy? What kind of person were you as a young kid?
I can't say I was a shy person or a shy boy. So the way I approach spaces, I go in establish how things are happening, and then find a place that I'm well suited in. So I can give you the contrasting example between my primary school and my high school. So in primary, I was more of the cool kid, more than well-known. Yeah, that type of a thing. But then it was because I felt more confident around people that I know, people that I've seen. So when I joined Lanana School, of course I was not the cool kid. Like I was not as exposed to the cool things at that point in time. So I still had to find like a space or a place for me. I'm also not a nerd, like not super academic bright. I would say I'm gifted in the sense that academics don't come very difficult for me, but I won't be like on the front of the Daily Nation. So sort of found this balance where you're not the very visible people in school, but there are a couple of things that you're good in. Academics, you're pretty decent, you're pretty good at it, but also found like a space in sports. I used to play hockey in high school, and by just navigating the spaces that you're in and like looking where you can fit in without striving to be something that you're not, I found that middle space where not a cool kid, not like the really bright academically, not the super known, but somehow you have your space in the place you're in. And I feel consistently over time, you will find in some spaces I'll come out as a very outspoken person. In other spaces I'll be a bit more reserved there, so I feel it's a bit more of my nature. Although to be honest, I'm a bit more outspoken now and more confident in the different things that I can do.
It sounds like you grew up relatively secure in who you are. Where did that come from? Was it your parents, as you say?
Yeah, I would say probably a lot to do with my parents and the environment and the time that we grew in. So you didn't have that much to compare. I wouldn't say I grew up poor. I didn't grow up rich either, but I wouldn't say I grew up poor. So you sort of get to this point where you're okay and you like what you have, and you can just be where you are than always striving to be this and this and this and this. And somehow I think that earlier grounding of not striving to be the coolest kid, to be the person who's known, gave me the satisfaction of like just being who I am. Of course, as a kid, there are times that you struggled, there are times you felt, oh, I wish I could be better, I could be cool, I could be this, I could be that. But with time you just realize you are you, and over time you become like the version that you are, and yeah, you just get to a point where you're happy with where you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And at Lenana, now umetoka Tenwek, and you see this is a whole different ball game. Did you feel the same way, or it took a while? How was your experience at Lenana
So
coming from?
okay, so one interesting thing that made Lenana a bit easier, and someone will not see it from the outside, in primary, we had very little food. I don't know how many people can relate to that. Like, one of my lasting memories about being in primary was being hungry. like we always hungry. We had so little food. So when I got to Lenana, the way they've done the school is, it's not a centralized kitchen. I think it's about 4 kitchens. And there was enough food. So got rid of my first problem. Now I had other problems. The first one was, I came from Bomet. I had a very strong Kale accent. So people would make fun of me for that. Then not being from, I think a good share of the people at the national schools came from Nairobi. So not having a shared view of the world in the beginning was a struggle, but luckily I was not the only guy who came from Chags. I remember a friend of mine, he's called Chege. We were in the same house in Lanana school. I think he was from Uranga. So I had a lot of people who we shared like backgrounds, even though he came from Central. The way he explained like his life, the way you'd wake up, maybe help with the farm, that's exactly the same thing that I did. So that gave me a sense of like there's a community there. Of course, I wouldn't describe it this way then. Like there were people I could be friends with. But I feel the more important piece was education itself was an equalizer. You could come from a very fancy background, you could come from a very nice place, but at the end of the day, when we did our exams, that's all that mattered, and I was pretty comfortable with that. So it even got to a point where if someone made fun of your accent, remember we were kids, like young adults, adolescents or something, just remind them, yeah, let's look at the marks when we do an exam. Just make fun of me. But at the end of the day, msema kweli?
Ni exam.
Yes. So that gave me more confidence, and then over time worked on that accent, learned how to speak better. And nowadays, the interesting thing is, at that point in life, I was ashamed of my accent. But nowadays, for example, when a watchman tells me, I suspected you are Kale because of your accent, it makes me happy, because now it's also something that reminds me of where I come from. So it's gone
the opposite.
Yeah. But I have a pitching voice or a pitching sound, but when I'm just talking with different people, it comes out, and I love it.
Yeah, I was actually about to mention that the shame from like where we get this shame from where we're from.
But we don't shame Spanish people or French people for having an accent. It's just in general, and also reflects on, I have really tried, and I'll try and do it in the legal way, to drop my English or Christian name. I would say I'm a Pan-Africanist. I strongly believe that in a big way, we've been made to be ashamed of our culture, to look down on our culture, and that has reflected on our identities and how we present ourselves. We more often than not feel that we are inadequate because we are aspiring to other people's cultures and ways of doing things. Like, why do you need an English name as an example? We have really, really beautiful African names. Yeah.
Kirui, what's your English name?
I wouldn't say. You'll have to go and research. I'm not volunteering that one.
Find it out, guys. Okay. So you say you performed relatively well, and that gave you some confidence. And you also discovered hockey. Was this where you discovered hockey?
Yes. So I first started with I tried to join the swimming team. That was my first stop. And remember, I learned to swim in a river. I didn't learn to swim in a swimming.
Okay.
It makes you a stronger swimmer.
Zile za brown.
Can carry. Yeah, the brown. But now, swimming kuliko na my style. So I could only do breaststroke. I realized the other ones are a bit difficult, but it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. I just didn't have the patience. But then somehow I picked up hockey, and by the time I was in Form 2, I used to play in the team. I even had the chance to go for the national games. I think it was in Kitale or Kakamega. Yeah, so it's like, have you ever found something that gelled with you? But then over time, you also realize you are a sporty person. Like, sports just come natural to you, because I also played touch rugby, even after high school or after university. I've played squash. Just you pick it and it flows. Yeah.
And that's such an important point, because in high school, I think we're in the discovery phase. Right now, the hockey you played reflects in how sporty you are. You go to the gym, you hike a lot.
The gym came way later though.
So it's like you can see where it all came from, and the dots connect.
Yes.
So I'd like to connect the dots. What did you want to become at this point?
In high school?
Yes.
In high school, initially I didn't have a very strong opinion of what I wanted to do. But I think one of the things that I thought about at that point in time, also because of what careers were presented as good options, I thought of being a journalist, but quickly dropped that. I thought of being a lawyer. I can be argumentative. and I can have strong opinions and read a lot of things and form a clear view of that. But I finally settled on being an engineer. Not a software engineer, like an electronics and like that type of an engineer. But then, in between completing my high school education and joining university, so we are at that age that had to wait. I think nowadays people finish their high school and then probably less than like a couple of months later they're in uni. For us, I finished my high school in 2006. But I joined JQuat in 2008.
2 years.
Yeah. So we waited we waited the entire 2007. Then joined in May. Like there was a long waiting time. So between completing my high school and joining JQuat, in Bomet, I had this friend who had a cyber, so I would go and help out, like printing nini. Also, even my dad's shop had a computer. Originally started only by watching movies, but then when I went to this cyber, I got curious, like around applications, installing things, not making anything actually. It was just installing, setting up, configuring. I even got to a point where I was helping him like shoot video content. So I'd actually take a camera and go and shoot a wedding. In fact, the first one I messed up. I didn't know you're not supposed to shoot continuously. You'll run out of like film. So I didn't capture the part. But I captured the important piece. So it sparked this curiosity and this thinker's mindset that I think I have. And all of a sudden, doing engineering didn't make sense to me. Ooh. So I ended up doing computer technology in JQuat, which now set me on a very different career. Oh. So can't really say you always know from the beginning, but I feel if you're given the opportunity and the space to play around with different things, and this is even something that now I usually advise my siblings and my friends' siblings, like just the younger people around me in that formative stage, especially high school into university. It's a very good time to play around with a couple of things so that you know what genuinely sparks your interest and don't fall for this is the cool option, this is the nice thing. Because I've also seen people get into tech, spend 4 years like doing an undergrad or spend a lot of time and effort only to realize, no, I don't like this thing. Yeah. Even one of my friends in uni completed like the undergrad and then went back to school to do something different because they realized, okay, it looks good in theory, but in reality, this is not something that I see myself doing on a day-to-day basis. So I can say I'm fortunate I found something. One, I could do many things, like I have a lot of interest, but I found one, that's tech, that was very interesting to me, could do it on a day-to-day basis, and luckily it could actually give me a decent living. Yeah.
So the boy from Tenwek goes to Lenana school, finds his footing, learns sports, and discovers, you know what, I want to get into computers and play around with that. So you go to JQuat.
Yeah.
Take us through that journey a bit.
JQuat. Juja Boys. Juja Boys was interesting. And the Juja Boys moniker is not like, it's not a lie. I was in JQuat between 2008 and completed my undergrad in 2011. And I think then the gender balance was still very, very like skewed heavily towards the guy side. But aside from all that, I feel, especially at the time that I was in JQuat, I'm not sure if I think it's gotten better now, but it's not just within the school. I feel the communities in tech have grown bigger. So JQuat, what it did for me, one, we had a couple of really good lecturers. So the first one, I think her name was Anne. First year, first sem, we were given a project to build a website. Like you've never seen code ever in your life. And by the end of the semester, they expect you to have something functioning. We went on a strike at that point in time, but to be honest, that initial Kickstarter, like this is actually how technology works. was the boost that a lot of us needed, because it forced you to do it, not to just read about
Yes,
it.
yes, yes.
And then in between, like I think between first year and second year, I went to Digital Age Institute. It's in town. I think I was doing C++ or something. So still build like a community of people that you can learn from each other. One of them is called Michael. He's the engineering manager at Cellulant. So like a lot of people around you who are really passionate about like technology, specifically coding, and just want to learn from each other. A bit of support from lecturers, although to be honest, and a lot of them, you could, for example, be in a class. I remember we were doing one of the low-level programming languages, and the lecturer couldn't run the demo, like code copied from the internet. So to be honest, there was a big part of that where you feel your lecturers are not invested in actually being like learning so that they can teach you as the times move on. But there was also a lot of like good influence from those lecturers and the people, mostly the people around you. And I think when we got to second or third year, we revitalized or restarted it's called SCOSIP, Society of Computer Science and Technology. So it's just like bring students together who have the shared interest. Started plugging into events at the IHUB. That's actually how I got my first internship. Ran into Liko Agosta, he's the CEO of Pesapal. Talked to him and just made a connection, and then when I was ready, I got internship there. So I feel JQuat for me was a good thing. A lot of the things and a lot of the explorations that I did were from that time. In fact, there's a time we got together as COSIT, approached a couple of companies. I think I was in third or fourth year, not very sure, and convinced them to sponsor a hackathon at JQuat. And we got students, more than 60 students, to hack overnight. And they were only winning like a hard disk. It wasn't a lot of money, and they were now trying to use the APIs these companies are building to build solutions. And then we had a reward ceremony in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah, so for me, JQuat was that space that allowed me to meet people, like-minded people within the institution itself, have a linkage to the outside world, and then mix those two up in such a way that if left alone to just learn, I don't think would have learned a lot compared to just mixing the lectures, our own activities as students, and then external activities. It just made this nice sport that's challenged everyone. And you will even notice, like, my classmates, I would say about more than 90% of them got into careers in development, not just in tech. Like, we really went into, because I think we just had the right set of conditions. Yes.
So I think this stems from interest. So, you connecting, you're generally, I can tell you are interested. So now that you are coding, this is the first time you've ever coded. Did you like it? Did you find that this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I would say yes, because the way you would evaluate if you like something, it can be difficult, and anyone who's learned how to build something will know how frustrating it can be. But I was able to stick through those frustrating points because it was always interesting when something worked. Like, you centered that image nicely. And I remember I'm dating myself, but I've already told you all like my dates. So as an example, if you are building a website, divs were not common. You had to use a table, like to style a table. Like from an HTML perspective, you are styling a table. So just figuring out those things, even something simple like embedding a song to our website. I remember one of my classmates did that, and we were impressed. Nowadays, it's so simple, but I feel you're really interested in something if even through like those difficult times, those frustrating times, you can still work through it and see the outcome.
So at this point, when you were learning, were you making any money? Were you building any projects?
Oh, yeah, I was. So, some of my colleagues consider me a businessman in the sense that I'm always interested in doing things that, in a way, I work with people to generate some money here and there. And this is something that started really early. In Lanana school, during Christ Giving days, so you know the way a school has like mugs, t-shirts, and those types of things. I was the person who used to sell them during the events, and then I would get a small commission. So I got into the business world, quote unquote, quite early on. When I was waiting to go to JKUAT, I used to collect like old tires and sell them to the guy who used to retread them. I don't think you're supposed to do that because retreading tires is cutting it, so it looks like like, you know the way a tire in Asia, then it becomes
smooth.
So they cut it afresh, and then it looks roadworthy. I don't think it is. I also used to collect used oil.
Used oil.
And then sell it. So there's a guy who used to come to Bomet and pick it. Apparently it's used in the process of making glass or refining glass. So I think I always had that view. I would not call it a gene. Like, I always saw opportunities where I could make money. So the moment now in JKUAT, we've done our first year. I've gone to Digital Age Institute. I'm in second year. I know how to use Joomla. I can build a website. So I started selling these services to like people that I knew. Of course, Bomet was a good start. So I went to Bomet, convinced this teachers college. They gave me my first website development job. I did a couple more in Bomet. There's even one I did in Kisii. So I started like using my skills early on to make money. And it's because I could offer something of value and I could actually sell and deliver. Yeah, so I started that part quite early.
Okay. Yeah. When you were in JKUAT, did you go to Digital Institute because you wanted to supplement what you're learning, or what?
It's two reasons. So the first part is I had two options. You have a 4-month holiday. What am I going to do in Bomet for 4 months?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And then my dad has always been interested in like taking such opportunities to improve what you're working on. So we had a conversation about it. I told him, like, I saw this thing. It was not super expensive. I didn't. So Digital Age Institute had like a full syllabus, like a diploma of sorts. I didn't take that. I just took like a specific part so that it brushed up what I was learning in school, and yeah, it made a big difference.
Okay, I see a lot of influence from your parents in terms of I can tell you have an abundance mindset where you try and get opportunities. And am I correct? Is that from your parents?
Yes. So my parents sort of instilled the confidence in us that you can do a lot of the things that you'd want to do. You just have to take the initiative. So my parents will not do the research for you. They will not go and like look for courses or things that you could potentially do. But if you have something that you're interested in, they will support you fully on that. And the good thing about it is it also reinforces the idea that you take charge of your life.
Yes.
You explore the things that you want. We've never had like scenarios. I have 4 siblings. Yeah. We've never had a scenario where like you're being told go and do this like course or go and do this. You'd come up with a list. Of course, they're still parents. They would want to understand what you're trying to do, and they would advise you to maybe this one, look at it from this angle. But it's always been clear that it's your life. You take charge. We'll support you where we can.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. So now we are making some money through website development to Bomet.
No, I was in JKUAT.
You're still.
So I would do it here. So I would go for clients. Like I was in school. In fact, like on a Friday, I would be going to Kisii at night because I have a meeting on Saturday morning with my clients.
Wow.
Then do the meeting, and then go to Bomet, say hi to my parents, and then maybe come back to Nairobi on Monday.
Oh, so
Yeah.
during the 4 months, you were still in JKUAT? The
So
long
for the gigs that I did on the side, they were never tied to me being in session or out of session. It was tied to them being available. I started it the moment I went back to second year. So I started my first gigs while in JKUAT, like during the, I think, first or second semester.
Okay.
Yeah, so balancing school, and that was actually interesting. But it was not difficult. I think we had a lot of time, partly because our lecturers were lazy.
Okay. So now after campus, tell us about Vaviant. Is it Vaviant?
Oh,
How did
yes.
you get that?
So I don't think many people know Vaviant, but Vaviant is actually the origin to Pesapal. Yes. So as I mentioned, I met, I think there used to be this event at the IHUB called Mobile Money. It was an event on Monday, and it was fintech, and just like people meeting to discuss a bit more about things they are doing in the mobile space, but related to finance. And it used to be a big event, and I used to go for those events. In fact, for one of the events, through Scosit, the one that I mentioned, we took JQuad's DVC to the event. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there was a very, very strong community around that. So when I met Liko there, I ended up asking for internship. Liko started Vaviant. And then from Vaviant, they created Pesapal.
Wow.
So in Vaviant, I started off as a web developer intern. I was there for 4 months, went back to school. Then when I completed my undergrad, I didn't start work immediately. I was off work for 1 month. So that is January. I completed in December. I was off work for 1 month. Ended up joining now Vaviant, which is Vaviant stroke Pesapal as a web developer. Again, quickly got into more of client relations or project management, because you realize you're still the person in charge of the project that you're building. And then over time, because pretty good at client relations, and people started taking over like more client relations
Facing.
type of work. But I didn't stop being an engineer at all. Like that was my day to day. This other part was what you needed to do to like
Support.
make sure the work is done completely. I feel, and I think this also has to do with personality. Some people find it easy to deal with people,
Yeah.
and then some people find it easier to just focus on like work that doesn't require you to interact a lot with people. I've always been comfortable with both worlds, and I think at Vaviant, that's when I realized this is actually something I can leverage, because the moment you realize there's a language difference between techies and normal people, quote unquote,
Yeah.
you need someone to bridge those two. So Vaviant was a very, very interesting experience for me. I was only there for 10 months, 10 very intense months. Like I did so much work in those 10 months, got exposed to so many clients, like a lot of interesting things, because it was a consulting company, and it just helped me see other parts of the entire process, the skills that you need, and also learn as Kirui, what am I really good at? Yeah, I'm a very good engineer, but I'm equally good at like interacting with people, discussing things, selling to people, which later turned into human-centered development. Yeah, so it's always an interesting thread.
Yeah, the dots always connect.
Yeah.
So I want to take you back a bit, because we are speaking to someone who is probably in the same position as you. They just finished campus and they're looking for their first gig. And you mentioned you spoke to someone and asked them, can you like just take us through you asking them, what does it look like shooting your shot? How was that process?
Oh, can I really remember? But the way I would explain it, so first, I knew about Liko and the work that they do at Pesapal. So that was the starting point, a conversation around how, like I admired their work and the things that they were doing. And then I talked about what I have done, like where I am, I'm in school, this is the things that I've been playing with. And remember, this conversation is happening at an event, a tech event. So already I've put in the effort to show up there. There's some sort of, say, self-selection. Like people in events, generally it means you've gone outside your comfortable space and you're going to interact with people to try and find opportunities that could match. So already I have like one leg up. I know about your company. I've done quite a bit on my side. I've shown the incentive to get here. And then I had a very clear ask. I was like, it may not be now, but I'm about to complete my that was third year.
Yeah.
I'm about to complete my third year of uni, and I'll be looking for internship. So and then contacts. And the moment now I was ready to go for internship, I reached out and luckily, just did the evaluation and I got the internship.
Okay, so I feel like it's a perfect storm of effort, putting yourself in the right place, people. All right.
Yeah.
So then you're discovering there's this interesting space between development and people from Variant.
That was later now. Now because I think when I was in uni, so as a student, we usually have like a more narrow perspective of what your career entails. And it makes sense because you can't focus on too many things at the same time. So as a student, my primary focus was being a better engineer, like learning how to code, like different ways and that type of a thing. But then I discovered the other side to being good at your job in the work environment. I don't think you can discover it as a student. As a student, you don't have client meetings.
Yeah.
You don't have to explain to like maybe your manager what you're working on. So I was a good engineer, pretty decent engineer by the time I started like my first job. But I feel a lot of the learning, in as much as it was engineering learning, a lot of the learning was just how do you work within a team? How do you relate with external clients? How do you relate with your colleagues? How do you work with your manager? So that's something that didn't come within the context of school. I feel it's something that you only get exposed to by being in a real work environment or a simulated work environment.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So from Vaviant, your 10 months enlightening, how did you get into software consulting at IHUB?
Okay. So as I had mentioned earlier, I'm pretty good at seeing like opportunities, especially financially, and never be ashamed to. I think at times people can be ashamed of looking at things from that perspective. Remember, it's a job. It's a career, it's a job. It's quid pro quo. There's also some financial incentive to it. So I stayed at Vaviant for 10 months, but after the 10 months, I felt there was like better opportunities outside that could allow me to still do interesting work, but like generate more income for myself. Having sold software development services before, for me, it was not an unnatural leap, leaving employment and going into consulting. So, because I'd been doing a lot of API work at Pesapan, I initially started off by just being an API consultant. If you're doing an integration, I could help you with that. And it slowly grew into something better. And because I didn't have a space to work from, I joined the IHUB and ended up being a green member. A green member, okay, this part is a bit difficult to explain because it's a bit... So IHUB had this interesting setup. IHUB is a co-working space and a community space. So in the beginning, the co-working space was opened to anyone, but it had different tiers. So the first one was just, you could come in maybe for a day and work from the space, but not every day because they had limited capacity. They would do these membership drives called green members, where you'd apply and give a justification why you should like use. Now it would be your permanent office, but you're not paying for it.
Oh.
Yeah, but then there were black members. Black members had like allocated desks. And most of them tended to be companies. If you have a small company with 3 to 4 people, instead of looking for an office, similar to the concept we have now, you do it. So I was fortunate, became a green member, so I started working from the IHUB co-working space. And IHUB had a consulting team, then led by a lady called Melissa Mbugu. I originally started with helping Melissa do the technical components of the proposals that they were sending out. And having been part of the sales process, when the work came, I would not be the engineer doing it, but I would be like a project manager on it, just to make sure it's executed and delivered on time. Melissa quit like abruptly. And while IHUB was looking for someone to replace Melissa, they gave me a 3-month contract, which turned into a 3-year contract.
Wow.
Yeah, but in between, like, I think it was a rather short period between being a freelancer and joining IHUB on a full-time basis. Probably at just about 6 months, but it was also an interesting time because by being a consultant, you just can't sit back and wait for things to come to you. You have to go and sell. You have to talk to people. You have to convince them that you can do this. And then then you have to do the work. And once you do the work, you have to get paid. So it now, like, already without knowing, it was setting my mind up for the next step in my career, which was leading the consulting team at the IHUB, which is now very different from being a software engineer. Now you're in charge of sales, marketing, recruitment, project delivery. You're not doing any coding anymore. Yeah.
Okay, so this is not long after you came from campus, which is a bold, which is like a bold move, I would say, to say, you know what, I'm actually a consultant. I'm actually an expert at this.
Remember, I had been a consultant in school.
Yes.
So it was not unnatural. And I think at times, like, we can be harsh on ourselves too much by assuming you should be able to just make that leap. Yet in reality, I had been selling for a long time. In high school, I was selling. Between high school and uni, I was selling. In uni, I was selling. So, like, that, it's a muscle, that especially the sales part, because I feel that's something that most people would struggle with. It's something that you get better over gradually, and if you use the same viewpoint to look at the other things that you try in life and give yourself a bit more grace to learn, you will do a bit more. Instead of jumping into something and then quickly getting frustrated because you're not picking it up as quickly as possible compared to someone else, you don't know the other person's story. So imagine comparing being a newbie at consulting and then comparing with now someone like me in that specific scenario who'd over time been actually building the skills. I'd built the sales skills mostly on my own through, like, the different things that I did. I'd build my technical skills in school and at Vavian, and then I'd build my client relation skills in Vavian. So it just came together. It didn't look like it was very intentional, because it wasn't, but it just came together nicely.
What would you tell the techie? Because I meet a lot of techies who do this, where they have experience, but they still call themselves a junior. Like, they don't see it from your eyes, where you're like, oh, I have experience. Anyone else would think I'm still not ready for consulting up until 5 years. So what would you tell the techie who's almost underestimating the experience that they have?
I would actually go a step further back. It can look appealing to be a consultant, but the first question is, why do you want to do what you want to do? Like, as Fian, as an example, why do you do what you want to do?
Is that like a real question?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Like, okay, let me explain it differently. For some people, it's very easy and very fulfilling to like run your own business, go through that hassle of doing all those things, but it's never really about the money. I don't think you do those things purely for the money, because they are difficult. And then there are some people who are a bit more comfortable with, you take care of, I don't know, office, sijui rent, sijui salaries, and I will focus on So you want an app or something, I will
what I'll
focus.
do,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why, like I always ask, why are you trying to do what you want to do before getting into the details of junior, senior? Because that part, a big part of it is imposter syndrome, because you feel you don't fit in.
Yeah.
You might not fit in because you don't have a bigger goal of why you're doing something. Then you can't see the steps to getting to that goal. You're already assuming there's a standard way people do things, so I'm gonna follow that. You don't need to do that. So figuring out what you're doing and why you are doing it and how it fits in your life. And then now the other part is just one, self, like reinforcing it yourself. You see the way people, okay, I don't do that personally, it doesn't work for me, but you see the way mtu anaweza jichocha kwa kio, like people wake up and like look at, the word is affirm. Yeah, affirmation. Like it's the same way, like even about your career, you need to affirm yourself, and then you need to surround yourself with people who also affirm you and show you that you're growing, you're getting better at what you do. Because now imagine saying it will take you 5 years to move from junior to mini. That means you're living in a vacuum where you're not seeing how other people are progressing. I could, for example, know, based on the cohort that we went to school with, I can see their career progression. I can match against them. So usually say comparison is the thief of joy, but comparison or evaluating how people are progressing is also a good way for you to see how you're going. Yeah, so it just starts with a lot of looking internally and less of looking externally, and finding people around you that help you. One, see the journey the way it is, not the way you just look at it and the way you put it down for yourself. And then two, challenge you to get better at what you do. Challenge and support it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was your why then? What was your why to getting into consulting?
I like having a lot of control over my time, the things I do, my destiny in a way, the time I work, and I falsely believed being a consultant will allow me to do that. It actually didn't. I ended up working longer hours. Yeah, in fact, I remember when I left Valiant, at that time I used to work out like every day. I used to do that insanity training, like do it in the morning, run, and then now start my day. It quickly switched from, I'm up at 6:30. Should I finish this work or should I work out? And before you know, like your life is consumed by all that. But then stepping back and now talking and learning from other people, you also realize in the beginning you have to put in such time to get to a point where you have more control over your time. Yeah, so my why is more to do with my personality and the way I hope to structure my life. I wouldn't necessarily, for example, okay, a deal breaker for a job for me would be one that requires me to be somewhere every day at a specific time. Like I can't, for example, work for a bank that requires me to be at the office every day at 8 a.m. dressed in a certain way. I'm like, no, life is too short. And I have the benefit or the opportunities to do things that are not like that. It's very, very important to acknowledge that, but it's also important to acknowledge the fact that the decisions that I've made in a way were geared to getting me to more stronger bargaining positions than when I was starting out. When I was starting out, wake up, go to the office every day without fail. Then over time, as you show your skill, get better at what you do, you have more things to bargain with in negotiations. All of a sudden you can say, we will not be coming to the office every day, or even the time we are coming to the office is a bit more flexible. Yeah.
Okay. For those who don't really understand what software consulting entails, because I know a lot of people, young people, are always looking for, what can I do in tech? Where's my, what is it? Could you just explain briefly, what were you selling? Like, what did your day look like as a...
Okay. So, businesses have problems that they need to solve, and most times they can't solve it themselves. And in the age that we are living in, technology can solve a lot of these problems. There are two ways you can go about it when it comes to technology. You can either resell, so think of reselling G Suite as an example, like for people to manage their identities, all that, or you can build. So it always starts with evaluating and understanding the problem space. It's not what can I sell, it's what problem in the marketplace can I try and solve in a way that, one, I can leverage the skills that I have, and two, I can do it in a way that it makes money for me. So for example, which good example can I give? I can't. Okay, I'll give an example of Masoko. So later in my life, I used to now run my own design and software consulting company called Made by People, and we had the opportunity to work with Safaricom on the Masoko vendor platform. And the issue they were having was to do with managing vendors and the solution that they have. So at the end of the day, when we talk about selling or getting into the software consulting space, you're actually not getting into the software consulting space. You're getting into the problem solving space, but you're using tech to solve the problem. Yeah. So if you switch your mindset like that, it becomes a bit easier to break it down to, okay, now that I need to find problems, which companies are there? Which segments am I looking at? Am I looking at NGOs? Am I looking at like startups? Am I looking at corporates? Am I looking at combining them? What issues do they have that I can teach them? And most of the times, the issues they have, they express these issues by creating a TOR. So how can I respond to the terms of reference in a way that positions me very well to be the vendor who was chosen to do this? Yeah. So and then there are certain scenarios, and I did this a lot, where you go and talk to the person that you're selling and show them the problem and how you can solve it. Yeah, so you can't just sit back and wait for. And it could also be like, for example, through writing. Like for me, I generated a lot of leads from writing. Like you talk about how you solved a specific problem for this company, and then the other ones, I'm like, oh, we also have the same problem. Yeah, could help me with that.
Interesting. So how much, you want to start, how much were you earning how much was your first salary at Fabian?
My first salary was 65,000.
God damn.
Yeah,
It
internship was little.
At that time?
What do you mean at that time?
From what you said, it sounds like it's...
No, context. I'd been consulting, so I would do a website for 200,000. Now you want to make me sit for 1 whole month and then pay me 65,000. It's kidogo.
Really, like at that time, because that seems like a lot of money for then.
Yeah, it was a very, very good salary to start with, to be honest. But I feel at that point in time, I'd already seen that you can actually make money in software. Okay. I'd not like divided it by 12, and this is something that I learned later. So if you look at consulting, it usually peaks. Like I have a gig for 3 months, and then I'm paid this amount of money. Then maybe for 2 months I don't have anything. Then I get another one. Yeah. So it can lie to you that you're making a lot of money. Yeah. So like later now, when I became a bit more serious about consulting, especially after I left Baviant, let me just call it Pesafal to make it easier. I realized for you to actually know if you're making money in consulting, you have to average the money. Like so, divide by 6. So like when it gets to June, look at how much money you've made in total and divide by 6 so that you know on average how much money are you making every month. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's easy to think just because you've gotten this 250K here, this 350K here, and then you've gone 3 to 5 months without work. Yeah.
I'm still stuck on the 200K, so I'm going to take you back. Okay. So in Campus, because most people right now would averagely make for a website about 15K, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, very little. But it's easier Campus, to do it. It's easier to do it now.
Yeah. So then you are making around 200K?
Yeah, demand supply. Think about it this way. One, I'm selling to people who the internet is important to them. they need students to apply, that type of a thing. There are not that many people who can do it. Like, I'm probably the first person to pitch it to you. So it's just a factor of demand and supply too, because I feel we've gotten to a point where, because there are a lot of people interested in tech, so supply is there.
Yeah.
And then it's also easier now. There are better tooling, better platforms.
Yes.
Yeah, demand has grown.
Yes.
Yeah, but like, it's just prices have gone down because it's no longer it's not a specialist job anymore. But now, if you're building an app, now that's a different thing. Like, the cost of building an app and the cost of building a website, those are astronomically different things.
That's crazy, because I imagine, just putting myself in that context, from Bomet to Lenana to JQuat, especially in campus, you don't understand money too much, or you haven't like touched a lot of money, I assume. So what, like, the confidence to say, actually, I'm charging 200K?
Oh, no, actually, it was 200 for two of them, not for one. So maybe around 100.
Still.
I don't know, ignorance.
Is it
Like, there was no
the
master plan. I just did the math, and that's what it came to, and that's what the client agreed to pay. Then, if your first client has given you a pretty decent amount of money,
so
the
it's
next one you're
upward.
not gonna ask for
Yeah,
30,000.
yeah.
And then you realize, of course, you're not gonna get all of them. You're not going to get all of them. There are some that they'll just say, and you will not get a lot of them too. So you see my math of averaging. But then I was in school.
Yeah.
It did matter.
Yeah.
If I got one in one semester, I'm done.
The confidence of a white man, they say. Okay. So at IHUB, you stayed for about, you said 3 years, right?
Yeah, 3 years.
Again, still software consulting. You took...
No, actually, IHUB was quite interesting. It was just not software consulting, because the way we usually frame software consulting, we limit it to the concept of just building the software. At IHUB, I discovered human-centered design. I also learned a bit more about data science and just general tech research. I was surrounded by really strong, like, people, both as individual contributors and my fellow managers. And it was an organization that allowed you to try different things. So, as an example, one of the things that we did way later was really rethink how we sell what we sell. And in other organizations, it would be a bit more top-down, where your CEO is the one giving a lot of guidance. So I really had a department that I owned. Like, the way we did things, the things we did, as long as we're just like going, like, setting clear financial targets for the company and achieving them, we were good. The how, that was left to our team. Yeah. And in that process now, especially now as someone who likes doing, because there are people who are comfortable being managers only. I'm not. I've never been comfortable being a full-time manager. I always want to be, like, in the game. So at IHUB, I acknowledged that I couldn't be a software developer anymore. I realized I didn't like project management at all. Like, I didn't like, I wouldn't imagine my life being a full-time project manager and not doing anything else. And that's when now I discovered, through a friend of mine called Mark Kamau, he used to lead the IHUB UX lab. I discovered human-centered design because we used to work together. So they would do the UX, and then we'd build it. And then, of course, I remember one interesting project in Ngulia Rhino Sanctuary. It's in Savo West. And we were building a tool for the rangers within the conservancy. So Ngulia Rhino Sanctuary is a protected area that has rhinos. So it even has a fence. They have the wardens doing patrols. So they would check for things like broken fences, footprints. Like, they can tell the difference between their footprints and poacher footprints. They would, when they see a rhino, they would take a photo of it. They can identify the rhinos. So they used to do this on PEP. So we had this nice opportunity to digitize. And during that time, I actually worked very closely with now our UX lead, Mark, to go through the process of design. I'd been like met people from google.org. Interestingly, we did a design sprint with them, and it just showed me this, oh,
Yeah.
there's actually, I know I've been talking to clients. I've been talking to clients and interacting with clients all my life, but I'd actually never really spent a lot of time thinking about user needs. Like, I mean, you could be the client, but you're not the one who will use it. Like, for example,
Oh, yes.
for Gulia, the client and the users were two different people. And yeah, so it really sparked another, like, it started another journey that was sort of very foundational to now where I am, human-centered design. I sort of became like a strong voice in the space. We started a community, Nairobi Design Community, with a lady called Marianne Kare. She's a very good UXer too. And just like really now got to a point, even as an engineer, because I still call myself a techie,
Yeah.
we still, like, our outputs, our outcomes tend to be digital tools, but then all of a sudden the viewpoint switched from, we have this idea to this problem for this segment, and this is how we can build it. Yeah.
So your product management was the dots were connecting from way back.
Yeah, and back to what I said earlier, it was not intentional, just a series of opportunities that sort of joined. So for product management, now I've been doing sales for a while.
Yeah.
I've been running a team for a very long time. So I understood the business component of product management. As a business, we're going to do something that will lead to the company being sustainable or profitable.
Yeah.
I've been in tech like all my life, so I understood technology, how to design and build applications. And now with the HCD component, all of a sudden the needs of the users, the importance of understanding the marketplace, competitive landscape made a lot of sense. So that combination is what led me to joining Eneza Education as the head of product when I left IHUB.
Ah.
Yeah.
So you resigned at IHUB.
Yeah. So IHUB was changing their model. When it was sold to a new investor, they were divesting from the consulting part of the business. And honestly, I didn't see myself like managing or like helping run a co-working space. That didn't have technology. And
Okay.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
the thing I wanted to do.
Did you have a job like when you're resigning? Did you already have?
Oh no, I don't do that.
Ah,
I
interesting.
quit and then find something else. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, I've done it. So I left Pesapal in November. I just quit, like, and then started consulting. So for IHUB, same thing. It was still in December, by the way. I left and then I was just chilling for 4 months. Then I joined Eneza. When I left Eneza, I consulted for a bit and then started my own company. And then I also left my own company and did nothing for a bit and then joined Microsoft. At Microsoft, I was affected by the layoffs, so I was not working I was not working a full-time job from March last year until until December when I started working at Google. So that part, I've never been afraid of being jobless. But it's also from a planning perspective in two sense. As I've grown up, when I was huko nyuma, like forward planning, especially financial planning, I was not very good at it. But it got to a point where I realized if I didn't need to rely on my salary for like my monthly needs every time, if I had some money that could allow me to quit and just maintain like a low like a low expense lifestyle for a bit, I could buy myself time. And this time is now when you actually get to meet people you could work with. So more often than not, if you're employed, there are a lot of opportunities out there or people would like to work with you, but Kenya, there's this respectability where people won't really poach or really reach out. But the moment they know you're available. So as an example, when I left the IHUB, I talked to quite a number of companies and ended up selecting one. And I only did that because they all knew I'm not working at the moment. But the second critical piece to this is if a tree fell in a forest and no one was around to hear it, did it make a noise?
No.
It didn't? No, it did.
It did, like you can hear it.
It,
Or like,
it made a noise, but no one heard. So you need to make noise. Like the only way this tactic works, if you're gonna go the high risk way that I go, and be quitting job randomly, you need to have built like your own personal brand of what you do and what you're known for, so that when you're looking for your next gig, you have you have a pipeline of people that can reach out to you, people that you can reach out to, and like a brand that you can use to bargain. Yeah.
hey, Kirui ulikuwa umechanuka kitambo sana. Mapema sana.
Just they are like, and so people usually assume it's from privilege. It's not privilege. I think ni stubbornness na courage. And also just, I think the universe in circumstances can favor you and things can go your way. But you have to like have that fearlessness to attempt certain things.
Yeah.
Even starting your own company,
Yeah.
there's a certain amount of fearlessness
Yeah,
that you
that's
have
true.
to have for you to do
That's
that.
true. I relate quite a lot with that. So very interesting, because a lot of people really say, make sure you have something before you
I
quit.
disagree with, okay, I don't disagree with it like in
Completely.
the strong fundamental way. I feel if you have the chance to have a gap between jobs, like if you can plan your, mostly it's your money by the way.
Yeah,
Do the other part you
yeah.
can. If you have, like if you can plan your money, have a gap, even if it's 1 month. You could be talking to people already, you've not signed. Like you're talking to some people. If you can have a small break, because one, you need it, like as a person. Like you need it. Like the 4 months I took between IHUB and Eneza, I think I really needed it because I'd been working hard for so long. Like mentally I was imbalanced. Like the way you see the world, your life and your identity slowly becomes your work. So those breaks for me, can you imagine waking up every day for 4 months with nothing to do? And then you get bored after a while, but then after a while you also realize there are other things outside your work that you could do that are fulfilling. But more importantly, you can take a shorter time, it doesn't need to be 4 months, but I think more importantly, and in a selfish way, if you take that break, you can talk to more people, you can explore more opportunities, and you can put yourself out there more.
That's interesting. So you talk about building your brand. At that time, was there, because now it's quite popular where people are saying build your brand on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram. Where were you building your brand? What
So
did it
I
look
wasn't
like?
building my brand intentionally. I just happened to like writing. And it started in JKUAT actually. So we used to do these learning sessions, like just among students. There was a platform then called J2Me for building, is it, what do you call it, smartphone apps? Because it's the Nokia phones. You could actually build apps for them, and then later Android. So we used to do these sessions where we would learn, like we would have a code lab where we would just go through things. Then I realized to scale this, it's better to write. So it's still up. I still have a WordPress site. I'll send you the link.
Yeah,
Like I did tutorials on like different things. There was even a point I would write about, I remember one, I think 5 Linux commands I use frequently, because in my day-to-day job, I would be doing something and then I have to look for it. I was like, let me just create a blog post. Anytime I want to refer to it, I can go for it. So my brand building was more around the way I express myself. And I think that's very important, like finding a voice that you're comfortable with, or a way that, so there are some people would be very comfortable doing video content. There are people who would just be comfortable, like maybe writing, like just finding a way of
how to express.
And purely seeing it from a brand building perspective can quickly lead you into this rabbit hole of trying to maximize for reach and brand reach, instead of you exploring things you're curious about and sharing it with the world. Think of now when I was in JQuat, I'm writing tutorials, I'm in school, I'm not teaching you per se, I'm just showing you what I'm doing and the things I'm learning along the way. That also reduces the mental pressure to make it perfect.
That's true.
Yeah, and then don't wait until you feel you're ready. Like, I can show you a trail of my growth from that WordPress site to writing on Medium to things that I'll do. Like, you can just see it. And it's just, for me, the way I see brand building, it's more of me sharing my journey than anything else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you're a good writer as well, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want us, before we get to, so you move from IHUB to Eneza, head
Yeah.
of product. Before we get to Made by People, someone would listen to this and think, wow, this was so smooth. He just kind of gelled into the, to every space he was in. And with that, because our main goal is to kind of share like really the challenges underneath, what would you say up until Made by People was your biggest challenge, or what would you say was your most challenging moment?
To say the truth, poverty is the enemy. The most challenging thing is being broke. So you see, with all those, as an example, when I left the IHUB, when I left Pesapal and started consulting, my overheads were pretty low, so I didn't feel that pain that much. But I could feel the pinch. That kind of reliable paycheck you get every end of the month, and then even if you're irresponsible, you will get like maybe 25, let's say 20 days later, you will have the same money. So financial responsibility and just figuring out, it was a pinch, and it was part of learning, but it's very uncomfortable. I think the harder one was between the 4-month one. I think by month 4, I was quite broke. Like the one that now you have to do like a lot of math around how you're gonna spend your money, what you're gonna do. But there's also the uncertainty of, I don't have a job. You have this conversation with someone, and then it falls apart in a certain way. You start, if you're not careful, you can start doubting like your abilities. So it's not smooth at all. It's a very rough way to go about it. For most people, the easier way is just to like have a steady job, or when you're changing jobs, you make sure you have another job before you move, because you don't want your money to be interrupted in any way. So I think you sort of have to sacrifice one, mentally, like being in that space that this is a risk. Like, as an example, taking on the head of product role at Eneza turned out to have been not the right decision for me, because I was only there for 6 months. I fell out with the founder, and I was let go. I was made redundant. That hurts. But interestingly, it's those moments that set you up better. And I could give it in 2 ways. Set you up better financially. You realize money is finite, and you actually have to play your money right. Like, you have to do things in such a way that if you lost your job, you would continue with life. So, and the way I even phrase it is, if for some reason I couldn't be a techie anymore, my life would just go on well. Like, I have other things that I've over time learned to do and continue doing. The second part is also your growth. Moving in the linear, progressive way that we're used to is like it's the more comfortable way, but with these jolts, like quitting and figuring out things, you come back stronger, in the sense that the role that I had at IHUB, going to Eneza, that was an upgrade. And then from being made redundant at Eneza forced me to start my own company. Having difficulties with my own company, especially sustainability during COVID, being a design and research company that relies a lot on people being out on the field and all that, it forced me then to figure out another thing, which is I'm going back to employment. This is something that I thought I had stopped doing, but I'm going back to employment. So like there are many tough parts to it. Even being laid off at Microsoft, I was only there for 2 years, 4 months, and you feel like you're now sort of getting into the rhythm. You're understanding the company. Your contribution is increasing. Then all of a sudden, you get a calendar invite on Monday. You know how these things happen? Let me actually explain it to you. So in the old world, when there was an office, the layoff process was like this. For Elon, you get to the door, your badge won't work. You know, you're laid off. For the more, actually, it's not just Elon. Even like quite a number of companies, they just deactivate your badge. And you might not, so you don't check your emails it's done at night, weirdly. You might not check, I don't check my emails at night. So if you go to the office, get to the security guy will escort you to a specific room. You will meet a HR person and your manager. You will be told, sorry, you've been affected by the layoffs, blah, 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 blah. And then, do you have any questions? Of course you don't have questions. You've been shocked. You're still processing. So, but the digital equivalent, or the irony with that part I've talked about, you see, like the manager letting you go. It could easily be once they are done with the people that he or she is managing, now their manager comes, they go to the other side and also let go. You literally escorted to your desk, you pack your stuff and leave. So the digital equivalent now for Microsoft in my case and for my colleagues who are also affected by the layoffs was on a Monday, you have a calendar invite from your manager that doesn't have an agenda and has a hidden guest. So when you join the call, there are 2 people, your manager and someone from HR who you've never seen. Yeah. Same routine. Sorry, unfortunately, due to, you usually use this words reorg to make the company like more efficient. You've been affected by the layoffs, and here is your severance. Do you have any questions?
Wow.
Yeah, so it's to be honest, like when I talk about my career, people tend to pick out like where I am or what I've achieved or the things that you can see easily, but you don't see. You see those points where you're really struggling. Yeah, you don't see them, but weirdly, those are the things that make you push yourself harder. So for me, when I was affected by the layoffs at Microsoft, I was evaluating, do I go back to the startup world, which like I love, I've done a lot in that space, or do I feel I've not learned enough from working in big tech? It turned out to be, I saw, or I felt, even though I'd worked at Microsoft for 2 years, 4 months, I had not really learned enough yet to say, I can take these lessons from this chapter in my life and apply to something else. So I really now focused on, okay, now that this didn't work out, I saw Google were hiring, and I'd applied before. And then they cut the role because they reorganized. Then I applied before, I don't know what happened. So I think it was my 3rd application. I spent so much time like preparing for the interviews, like making sure that I really understand my fundamentals when it comes to products. And so it's that setback from Microsoft that forced me to step my game up and really like prepare for now. What else am I gonna do? This is just like a part of my story. It's not the end of my story. I'm starting a different chapter. I might not know what this chapter is, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. And I think that's now something that I finally gotten to a point where I constantly remind myself to make the best of the opportunities that I have at that point in time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So just as we're wrapping up, I'd like to ask, you've mentioned a lot of your roles. It was a lot of people and effort. With Microsoft and Google, was it the same? Because a lot of people assume that with big tech, kind of have to know someone.
No. Actually, For startups, and like other companies, that's the spaces that it's easier to know people and get in, because just purely based on how the interview process is structured. So knowing people in the context of big tech or the likes of Microsoft and Google, the most that someone can do for you is recommend you. And I usually tell people that ask for my recommendation. I can only recommend you if it carries weight. So I can't recommend you for a role. We've never had a capacity where I saw you do the role and I believe you. So that's the only leg up you can get, because a recommendation essentially gets your CV in front of the recruiter, because the company believes, most these companies, and it's a general thing, if I'm going to recommend you, it means I know you can do the role. So if someone is recommending me to, if I'm recommending Fian to someone, that person will look at your CV first. But after that, you have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's a structured interview process. It's not guesswork. It starts with the CV screening. Most people are checked at that stage, because it's a lot of volume, and they have a very clear criteria of evaluating it. And a lot of people are removed at that stage for having a bad CV, not for being unqualified, because you've just, for example, not taken the time to understand how to communicate effectively to these companies. Remember, and this is something that I always remind people, for any role, I don't have a general CV. I'll look at your job application and reorient my CV using something like Gemini to just quickly make it fit for that role. I'm not lying, I'm just showing you relevant experiences. Then after the CV screening, there's usually, it depends on the company, you will talk to one person, so probably a recruiter, who will make not a recruiter, someone who's not in the team that you're joining, but is the same role. So if you're applying for a PM role, you'd talk to a PM. Maybe it could be even a more senior PM than the role that you're applying. And that PM is chosen randomly. It's things people volunteer. There's no set list of these are the people who are going to interview the people. And you could fail or pass there. If you pass that one, you have a round robin. So that could be 4 to 5 interviews with different people who have to meet and give their written feedback and decide on if you should proceed. If you proceed beyond that, that's probably the negotiation and offer stage. So so how many people do you need to have in place to take you through all that? So it's your effort, it's your preparation, it's your fit for the role. And in fact, at times when someone is applying for a certain role, I would tell the person, go for it, but just based on the requirements and having been at Microsoft and Google, this role based on your CV is more senior than you think, than at this stage in your, the expectations are higher than what you can deliver, because the general approach, especially as tech companies become bigger, is they reduce that thing of hiring for potential and just hiring for what you can do right now. So that you can now grow from what you can do right now into the next thing. And one of the former VPs at Microsoft was explaining this some time back. It's easier to, we just within the team, it's easier to promote someone, aka you underhired. Fian came in as a senior, but is probably meant to be principal, than the other way around. You coming in as principal, and then they are this person is senior. So how do you demote someone? So I feel it's easy to castigate and say from the outside that, oh, you need contact. But if you actually do the investigation, it's a lot of your effort and fit for the role, and just also a bit of luck. You can never discount luck.
Okay, all right. So you spoke about the Microsoft layoff, and I just want to wind that up with this discussion. So once you are laid off abruptly, I know that can definitely take a toll on destabilize you mentally. Can you take us through like the months? What did you do to, go through that period?
So it's and from that blog post I wrote about the layoffs, a lot of people have reached out to me about like going through the same experience, because I think it's something that happens fairly often. One, it's a bad event. No one wants to get laid off. It's a profitable event. It's better than quitting, because when you quit, you don't get a severance. When you quit, you voluntarily left. So one, the first thing, like before anything else, the moment I learned you are being laid off, the most important thing for me was to establish how much money we're being paid. Because now from a financial planning perspective, of course I still have my runway, but I know like this amount of money you're giving me, and fight for that. Don't just accept what you're given. Even for our case, like we really had to fight. As an example, a big part of compensation in like tech companies that have IPO'd is in stock, but stock vests. Like, so we were given like notice on March 27th, a 2-month notice, and then we had a major vesting date on, so 2 months is May. We had a May 30th or 31st vesting date. So we really had to fight and say like, we know you guys are doing this intentionally to save the company money, but that's unfair. Even fought because they'd not given us any severance beyond the bare minimum. It was redundancy. So for every year served, you get 15 days, and then your leave days. That was it. But then they ended up like adding some more money. So first part, like before anything else, before you start processing the grief, just don't make sure you're not being screwed out of your money. And being a nice person in this context, it's not something that you should consider the most, but being professional is important. Yeah. So don't be nice, but be professional. So after that, now the second part was just grieving. Like you've lost a job that you like, something that you like doing, and just accepting that, yeah, this happened. That you know those stages of grief. Yeah, going through those stages of grief, and just giving yourself time to, like, in a way, wallow, but not too much. Like just to accept what has happened, and then you pick yourself up and figure out what next. And it could take some time. The time you take depends on a number of factors, where in your life, how long you can afford, and so on and so forth. But you still have to accept that something bad happened to you. You just don't brush it off and pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And finally, the light at the end of the tunnel came with Google.
Yeah, that was incredible. It was not like the interviews were difficult, and it took a bit of time. I think I started interviewing with Google in June, and confirmed, got an offer in November.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's a bit of time. Very intense interviews, a lot of learning personally, because I think at the same time I was doing the Africa Climate Summit project. Really fantastic project. Yes. So learning on the job, also reading on the side, preparing for the interviews, and just getting that news. I think it didn't sink in properly yet. And I don't feel like I've really celebrated it. Yeah. Still getting into the groove of it, really liking the work, liking the people that I'm working with, liking the opportunities that I'm presented with, and just hoping there'll be more beyond the ones that we have, and for more people. Yeah, so for me it was, I wouldn't say I always dreamed to work at Google, but it was one of those companies that was like, this is a good company to work for. And at that point in time, the only option was to leave the continent. And I think mentally, and just the way I've always viewed the world, I've not been very strong about immigrating to go and work.
Yes.
I'm hoping to go to school, but having the opportunity to work for Google in Nairobi, I was like, oh, okay. The universe works well at times. Yeah, really happy about it.
So this is a congratulations.
Thank you.
You didn't celebrate.
Thank you so much. I love flowers, actually.
Really?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you definitely deserve it, and we really, I feel like your journey is so, like, there's so many like assets, parts to it.
Yeah.
Building the Africa Climate Summit, we'll definitely share a link on that process here.
Oh, okay.
And also building your own company.
Yeah.
It's been a
Yeah.
very good.
That one is a podcast.
I know.
Yeah, that was something I feel like one of the most fulfilling parts of my career was made by people. 3 years, it was amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because of time, I really want you to share, if you met younger Kirui as you're driving outside here, what would you say to him? What would you tell him?
You don't need to change anything. Like, you don't need to look back and say you wish you did this differently, you wish you had not done this. I think life is a journey. It has pleasant parts, it has unpleasant parts, it has uncertain parts, it has certain parts, but it's the sum of it that makes you who you are and what you see and who you become. Changing, it's like that thing of time travel. Changing just one thing could significantly alter. Like, there are some interesting opportunities I got along the way, especially when I was at the IHUB, which if I had taken, I would be a very different person from who I am. So I'm really happy about how things have turned out. So I would just tell Kirui, young Kirui, follow your passion, follow your heart, but also be aware of the realities of your life as a black man coming from not a privileged background and with so many opportunities in front of you. Just do your thing, it will work out.
It will work out.
Yeah.
It will work out.
Yes.
Thank you, Kirui.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for the nice interview.
And I hope we get like a part 2, talk about made by
not
people.
a problem.
Okay.